Hello and welcome to Blue Dragon. With me here today is Dr. Bill Toth, our VP of Research and Development. I'm Rob Della Espriella, the CEO of DLE Technical Services and the creator of the Blue Dragon Integrated Problem Solving System. And in today's blog post, we'd like to talk about a really interesting subject. It's called Afraid and Clicking: How to Navigate the Information Flooded World We Live in Courageously. And the author of the article is Dr. Toth, Bill. And we want to dive right in. Bill, can you provide us with a quick overview of what this article is all about? Afraid and Clicking.
So, in essence, I think that there's a kind of dysfunction amongst the citizenry of the United States. I mean, we could talk about it worldwide, but let's just focus for this conversation on United States citizens because that's closest to what we can think about. That essentially looks at people locked away in their social media driven worlds with their computers, doing a lot of screen time, frantically going from place to place, looking for answers to questions that other people have posed. So I think that, the inspiration came from, why aren't we out in the streets? Why aren't we out engaged in community? Why aren't we doing things that are positive for our own health and our own life? It's because that we're afraid of something. We're afraid of something someone else has probably created for us to be afraid of. So the first thing I wanted to kind of look at was what is the dynamic that we're all suffering from, I think, in today's social media driven economy, and who benefits from our confusion, our anger, our fear. And so look at that from that perspective. And then secondly, I wanted to look at what are our ways out? How can we look at the world in this information rich, disinformation, misinformation, real information, all mixed up in one big mess, and how can we sort of sort that out, and how can we now live more intentionally, live more courageously, and live more meaningfully in the face of this reality?
Well, the first question I have for you here is if you could frame for us what you think the ultimate problem is here. Again, if we're talking about afraid to click everywhere because of all the information and misinformation we're getting, what do you think is the ultimate source of that problem?
Well, I think that the source of the problem is that there are other forces that are involved in our lives that are keeping us afraid, and I think they benefit. And we can talk about that in a second. But what the problem is that we've become isolated, and fear, drives us back into these sort of safe spots that we think are safe spots, but they actually end up perpetuating the problem because we typically lock ourselves away. We think that the bigger world is dangerous and mean, and so we stay in our safe spots, which is now becoming increasingly small in front of our phones, in front of our screens or computers, and we're looking for answers. We're looking for answers to what? We're looking for answers to why we're afraid and solutions to the dilemmas that we think that are causing us fear. So that's the ultimate problem, which is I think that we're disengaged, even though we feel like we're engaged. The illusion is that we're engaged virtually, but we're becoming disengaged from our communities in a real and meaningful way, I think.
All right, thanks for that, Bill. Now, this is a really loaded question, I guess, but who benefits from keeping us afraid? Who benefits from this concept of afraid and clicking?
So I would encourage everybody to go out and do just a quick Google search. I mean, Google tends to be part of the problem that we're discussing here today, but go humor it for a little bit and do a Google search on the rage economy, and you'll find countless articles. Fundamentally, though, to distill all of those articles, and this is a much longer conversation that we can have, there are people, corporate interests out there that actually benefit quite a bit from our fear. They slip advertising in, they blitz us with information. They also create a number of smoke screens for their sponsorship so that we can not focus on important issues that matter, but focus on some of these created, manufactured boogeymen that are keeping us afraid and clicking.
So let me get this right, Bill. I think if I were to summarize it as a consumer of multimedia, that the more fear they put out there, or the more scary things they put out there, the more they keep my attention, and that translates to them into profits.
Yes.
But at the same time, it has a detrimental effect on my view of the world, obviously. That's a
Yeah,
very,
that's right. Because the commodity here is the attention of potential consumers, and so if you get somebody's attention, and fear is a great way to do that, then you can then slip in all the things that you want to sell them, or you can actually begin to influence them in really subtle kind of ways. And there's plenty written on this and ideas like manufacturing consent and other such things. It's very difficult. I'm going to slip this in. Very difficult to live in a highly complex world and be expected to make informed decisions on virtually everything that a democracy would have to decide upon. And so, what leaders have found long ago is that you begin to address this issue by actually swaying opinion based on fear, anger, or these other sorts of emotional things, rather than an intellectual assessment of all the facts and then making a decision. And frankly, it is a quite difficult task to sway an entire population to one right way, next direction, one next right project, because everyone would have to become extremely educated on these things, and that's really not practical. So we all open ourselves as a part of democracy to these forces of fear and emotion that people have figured out how to play on, propagandists, advertisers, and the rest. And so there are plenty of opportunities for these people to slip things in and then either influence us or sell us something.
Yeah, and it just dawned on me as you're speaking here that the more they can influence us, what that creates is bias. They would like us to be biased in one way or another. And so each media that is trying to sell us something or indoctrinate us in something, they're trying to create a bias and have that bias work to their benefit. And of course, ultimately, perhaps to their profit, whether it's monetary or political or otherwise. So great points here, Bill. Well, let me give you the next question that I have here for you. So why is it that myself and the public are so vulnerable to these kinds of suggestive topics on media?
Well, I think it has to go back. We go back to the conversation about the big and complex world. In the day when all that we had to really be concerned about were how we got food on the table, our specific work that we were engaged with in our communities, which were very small, we had simpler problems to solve. And we had more of a connection with the local community that we felt like could be supportive when we worked out into the world that way. Now that the world has become much larger, we face a different kind of problem. Think about a kind of Venn diagram, which is a huge circle, which I would define as our sphere of knowing about it, and then a very small sphere, which would be a circle, which would represent the small circle of things that we can do something about. And the distinction or the difference between the big sphere and the little sphere is an opportunity for a great deal of stress and anxiety. So I can know about something that's happening in Far East Asia or Africa and feel some emotion to maybe I can make a difference, maybe I can make something happen, when I might have no impact on that whatsoever or no even power or opportunity to do anything about it. So, and on the other hand, inside that small sphere, I could, move out to my neighbor, which is next door, and help them out with something, or be an assistance in a local community or something like that. But now I'm not doing that because I'm concerned about issues around the world. So I think we have to have a better alignment between the things that we can do things about and things that we can know about.
Yeah, I like how you put that. And we have control over certain things and no control over a lot of what we see and hear in the media. So it is important to have that kind of, I guess, a thought process or a realization that we shouldn't worry so much about the things that are out of our control and focus on the things that we can actually do something about while being aware of the other things in case they do affect us. Some things may look big, actually, but we could have something that we can do about it, whether it's things like, and now I'll go to the political sphere, which is, of course, a hot topic these days. What can we do about things like inflation? We need to be aware of what's going on with our banks, our banking system, right? The money that the interest that our money is earning in the banks compared to maybe some other vehicles like real estate. So can we do something about inflation? Yes, we can personally do something about where our money is invested and what where we're getting our interest or our equity from, and on and on. We can influence elections, for example. Hopefully making informed, unbiased decisions. And that brings us to the next question, Bill. So from a practical standpoint, what can we do about everything that we're collecting and processing from the media.
So that's great, and that leads us into sort of the practical aspects here. I think that what we can do is begin to sort out those things that we can do things about and should do something about, and the things that we can't. And then we have to then begin to employ certain kinds of techniques that allow us to sort through information, consider context, consider timelines, and consider the sources and the veracity of those sources, hierarchies of how much we would believe in them, and then use them effectively to make more informed decisions, and then look at the things that those informed decisions would lead us to take action on. So I think there's a whole lot to sort out, and if I said, if I'm hinting at a really powerful methodology to do that, then yeah, that's right. We do have the suggestion of a powerful methodology that helps us do exactly what I'm talking about.
And now you're speaking my language, of course. And you mentioned it in your article, the fact that what the Blue Dragon integrated problem-solving system is meant to do is to take factual, verified information, bring it in and organize it and analyze it, and create a line of inquiry or multiple lines of inquiry to pursue the sources of a problem in an unbiased manner. And so for that, we have to consider the sources, evaluate the sources of information, and accommodate the bias, as you write in your article. Eliminate the bias if we possibly can, not only from what we're bringing into the equation, but from our own perspective. We have to neutralize our own internal biases as we pose the questions. And I think you mentioned one that was very powerful, and I focus on a lot when we're doing Blue Dragon investigations, and that's called confirmation bias, where we actually pose the questions where we believe will lead us to the answers that we feel are the right answers. And I see that happening a lot out there in the media. You pose leading questions, I call it leading the witness, that are really nothing more than confirmatory bias. And that's a very dangerous thing to do when you're trying to get to the truth or the real issues. And so I appreciate that you wrote about that in your article. Bill, let's talk about, in the end game, right? The end game is ultimately, how can we improve the way we view the world? How can we improve our lives by being aware of what you're calling here clicking and afraid? How can we be less afraid, and how can that have an impact on our lives?
That's a great segue, because I think that if we are afraid is kind of a constricting dynamic. I'm pulling back, I'm pulling into my safe spot, and I'm not very effective if I'm afraid. If I'm scrambling around to look for information to bolster ideas that I already had, I don't have a very open mind. So I continue to reinforce getting smaller and smaller. And what we're saying is, if we use effective critical thinking, problem solving, and in addition, keeping an open mind to say that I don't know everything I think that I know. Part of the model that seems to be very effective for the 24-hour news cycle is its ability to make us feel like we're informed. We're not actually informed. We just feel like we are. But if I confront this and say, well, I'm not as informed as I thought I was, get a little bit more humble, open the mind a bit, and then begin to take in additional information, I become less afraid. When I become less afraid, I'm able to open up in so many ways, move out of my so-called safe space, which isn't actually a safe space at all, and move out into my community, move out the front door of my house, metaphorically and in reality. Go help my neighbor. Go now look inside that sphere of things that I can actually do something about and start to take action. So I think once we rid ourselves of the forces that keep us afraid and clicking, then we move into a space where we're more rational, more open, and more we're thinking and we're not clicking. So I think these tools that we're talking about allow us to do that. And so we become more courageous, and we're moving more courageously into a space where we can take action and not just getting back in a world of afraid opinion.
That's very powerful. It's a really powerful message, Bill. And if I could do a direct translation or correlation, the less fearful we are, the less afraid we are, the less stressed out we are. And as you and I and everyone knows, stress kills, right? Stress causes cancer. Stress causes all kinds of health issues. And we may not know it, and we may not have the studies to prove it, but there probably is a direct correlation between stress and fear, the fear in your life that unbeknownst to you is creeping into your life through the media. So by being just aware, just right, Bill, by just having an awareness of what's going on and having a model or a process to filter the information, understand that it's biased. If you're actually trying to make decisions or solve problems, use a model like Blue Dragon to actually analyze that information in an unbiased manner. All that can go to reduce your fear, reduce your stress. Maybe you live healthier. What do you think, Bill?
Oh, I absolutely think that it is. It's going to make you healthier. It's going to make you more empowered. That some of this powerlessness is a cause of stress, and there are plenty of studies that will show that this leads to health effects. So we're talking about a methodology that can actually be applied in the personal sphere, how I now live my life and how I engage. But then it's really important to show that this whole methodology was born in helping organizations do what they do. The model is the same: is that we're open, we keep an open mind, we organize information rationally, we don't overassume and don't end up in a space where we think we know what we know, but we really don't know it. We don't make assumptions, look for confirmation bias, and the rest of it. So we do that on an individual basis, on a corporate basis, and potentially on a national basis and a world basis. So this model is the same. It's just that the content and the complexity of the problems that we solve get bigger and bigger the larger the organizations that are dealing with it. But so fantastic. Good on the personal and good on the corporate, good on the collective.
There we go. Well, Bill, I think that's it. Thanks again. The title of this blog post is actually Afraid and Clicking: How to Navigate the Information Flooded World We Live in More Courageously. I encourage you to read the actual text of the blog post. It has more information than what we covered here. Hopefully you got a lot out of this. This is part of the Organizational Excellence series that we put together here, Bill and I, on our Blue Dragon YouTube training channel. So feel free to go check that out. Also, reach out to us if you have any questions or comments about this post or any of our other posts on our blog. Thank you very much, and until next time, on behalf of Bill and myself, have a great one. Thanks.